I thought of calling it Jurassic World Stillbirth, but that was too mean. Many years ago, in 1993, I enthusiastically bought a ticket to see the original Jurassic Park. And if anyone asked me why I was doing that, I responded, because I want to see some cool dinosaurs. And that is exactly what I got. That movie delivered cool dinosaurs and some thrills and some very interesting science and science fiction, and even some good laughs. I didn't think it was a very good film, but I did enjoy it. Since 1993, I have seen the original Jurassic Park several more times. It has actually gone up in my estimation. I saw Jurassic Park: The Lost World, the second one, and I thought it was okay, but I also thought that parts of it were gratuitous and even sadistic. I can never forget a very long, terrifying sequence in which a truck or trailer-like vehicle was either hanging from a tree or off the edge of a cliff, and the people inside it were dangling over a very thin glass window that was starting to break. I remember that sequence just went on and on until it got a little more ridiculous, and I started getting bored. I am bringing up these old movies because Jurassic World Rebirth was written by David Koepp, who wrote the first two movies, to which this new film is definitely a callback. Let's start with the good. Much of the time, Rebirth was actually a lot of fun. There were a lot of very exciting sequences in which characters were chased through tunnels by monsters, thrown from boats and life rafts, caught in helicopters that were chewed on by monsters, dangled from the faces of cliffs, and all sorts of fun encounters. There was definitely some good acting, and I enjoyed seeing Scarlett Johansson as an action star. It's only a matter of time before she gets to star in her own version of Taken or John Wick. The rest of the cast was certainly fun as well, though their results definitely varied. Mahershala Ali brought a wonderful Indiana Jones-like energy to his portrayal of a wily and weathered sea captain. Rupert Friend was charming and oily as an unscrupulous pharmaceutical company representative. Jonathan Bailey played a charming, updated version of the Sam Neill rumpled scientist character from the original Jurassic Park. There was also woven into the movie plot a family in danger with needlessly complicated characters and backstories of their own. So the plot gave you a lot to chew on. The movie looked great. I read that it was shot on 35mm film, largely on location, which gave it a wonderful, authentic look. The action sequences were mostly convincing. They looked well executed and felt realistic and mostly believable. Now for the not-so-good stuff. Rebirth has a number of boring scenes and sequences, and that is almost unforgivable. It's nice that all the characters have had recent disappointments and tragedies to make them feel real and authentic, but this isn't a character study, and we don't need to spend so long getting to know a bunch of folks who just might end up being dinosaur nibbles. The premise of the movie was barely believable. An evil drug company was spending millions of dollars to send reckless people into a dangerous place in order to find a chemical treasure worth billions of dollars. Couldn't they have found anything more interesting or unique? Rebirth contains several serious plot problems that I thought also plagued the first two Jurassic Park movies. First of all, it seems that if any movie that contains Steven Spielberg's name anywhere in the credit sequence, then it must follow a number of story rules, the biggest of which is children may be put in danger, but they may not be killed. Spielberg has a humanity about his films, a basic decency, which I find somewhat comforting as a filmgoer, but which can also limit him as a filmmaker. I know that Spielberg didn't direct Rebirth, but his fingerprints are all over it. The original Jurassic Park contained a 3-hour scene of two children being menaced by velociraptors in a kitchen. Was it 3 hours? I don't know, but it sure seemed to go on forever. I found that scene boring as hell. Why? Because I knew that those children were not in any danger. That movie was directed by Steven Spielberg, and I knew Steven Spielberg would never seriously harm a child on film. As a film director, having such an innate decency might be great for your brand, Parents who take their kids to your movies will rest assured that nothing too shocking will happen upon the screen, at least nothing that could seriously traumatize their children. Alfred Hitchcock, on the other hand, offered no such assurances to audiences. The genius of Psycho, for example, was that Hitchcock allowed an audience to spend 45 minutes with a character played by Janet Leigh, only to have her brutally murdered in front of their eyes. An audience seeing this would not only be frightened by the actual events, but would also probably be terrified by the mind behind the movie. They might be thinking, this director is crazy. He might do anything. No character is safe. And if you're Alfred Hitchcock, you're making Alfred Hitchcock movies, that is a great reputation to have. I love a good dinosaurs chasing you around the kitchen scene as much as the next person. And Gareth Edwards, the director of Jurassic World Rebirth, included a version of that scene in Rebirth by having dinosaurs chase some kids around a convenience store. But it went on for too long, and it got boring. I knew that those kids were in no real danger. In fact, I knew that everything involving those kids and the family that they were a part of was not going to place them in serious danger because they were the good guys in the movie. They were the innocent souls drawn into something that they had nothing to do with, just like John Hammond's grandchildren in the original Jurassic Park. So everything involving that family, exciting though it was to watch. Who doesn't love seeing a deformed dinosaur attack a little girl floating in a rubber raft? Well, it got boring after a while because there were no real stakes. Everyone was going to survive. No one was even going to break a limb or get maimed. When you see people fall 50 feet and just, kind of wipe themselves off and say, ow, then you know that these are characters that are going to survive no matter what. Everybody was going to make it back to civilization. Maybe needing a little therapy, but not surgery and not a casket. Half this movie was danger-free and intended for kids and to be the basis for a new Universal Studios thrill ride. But what about the other half? The half headed up by Scarlett and company. That part was tougher to swallow because nobody in that part of the movie had any redeemable characteristics, except for possibly the rumpled scientist. Scarlett's character was a mercenary. Indeed, one of the other characters even called her that straight to her face. The boat captain was a con artist. The first thing he did when we met him was hold out for double his agreed-upon fee. The pharmaceutical guy was simply evil, as all corporate types are in these movies. I don't actually remember what the rumpled scientist's motivations were. He seemed to have been plucked from the 1993 film, in which dinosaur scientists were only able to study fossils and not living creatures. Now, that didn't really make sense, considering that dinosaurs were supposed to have been roaming the earth for decades by the time Rebirth takes place. Why was this guy gaping in childish wonder when he saw a dinosaur out in the open? I don't know. There were some other characters too, like an intimidating Dolph Lundgren type guy who didn't last very long and some other guy who smiled a lot. My problem with these characters was that they were hard to take an interest in, much less root for, because none of them had real integrity. They were all simply out to make a buck. So it was weird to see them getting furious at the pharma bro when he did something that was a little more greedy than the greedy things that they had all already done. I like Scarlett Johansson. I kind of wanted her character in this movie to be like an updated version of the sweet zookeeper she played in We Bought a Zoo. Someone who just deeply cared about animals above everything else and was on this expedition secretly vowing to protect the animals rather than just bring home a big pile of money. But hey, you are watching this video to figure out whether you should see Jurassic Park Rebirth. If you have not seen any of the Jurassic movies, then definitely see this one, because a lot of it will be new to you, and it's very exciting to watch, except for the boring scenes where people talk about their lives and pasts and broken dreams and stuff. If you have seen all the Jurassic movies, this one doesn't bring anything new to the table. It's mostly well executed. It's written okay. It's acted convincingly for the most part. It does its job. But you could miss it, and nothing about your life would be any different. If you are a hardcore science fiction fan, this movie doesn't deliver a lot of science. There were some interesting concepts, but nothing as brilliant or mind-boggling as the premise of the original Jurassic Park, which was that extinct creatures could be resurrected through DNA trapped in amber. Now, if you are a visual effects fan, I hate to say this, but the effects in this movie, well, some of them are not that great. Now, to be fair, the makers of this movie were attempting almost the impossible. Dinosaurs! And the things that they did do well, they did very well. Dinosaurs were stomping around, being cute and hiding in backpacks, swimming, flying, running, and most of it looked great. But there were a couple of shots that just overreached. Watching them, I thought I was watching Empire of the Ants or The Poseidon Adventure or something involving rear projection in the 1970s. New rule. In the 2020s, with audience standards so high and with so many incredible visual effects now possible, if you cannot pull off an effects shot absolutely perfectly, maybe don't try it at all unless you are going for laughs. Speaking of laughs, as I said, I am an admirer of screenwriter David Koepp. However, there were a couple of attempts at levity in this movie that fell excruciatingly flat. In one case, I actually felt bad for the poor actor who was forced to deliver the unfunny line. I don't want to spoil these moments here, because they could work better for you than they did for me, but beware of them. There was also a lot of cliché material in the script. Almost nothing in this film attempted to go beyond the obvious. And I would expect that Steven Spielberg, armed with major studio money and resources, would deliver original, interesting, and top-tier ideas. I would expect material that goes way beyond the obvious, and Rebirth did not. It was merely adequate most of the time, and occasionally pretty good. The original Jurassic Park had a very intriguing premise that I actually found in a quote from the book of Exodus. If an ox is in the habit of goring people, and its owner has been made aware of that, and has not kept it confined, and the ox has killed a man, then not only shall the ox be put to death, but the owner will be killed as well. John Hammond, creator of Jurassic Park, had animals that he knew were dangerous, and he pretended that they weren't dangerous. And his animals got loose and did some goring. And John Hammond needed to be put to death. Rebirth does not have a powerful premise like that. In fact, it doesn't have much of a premise at all, except, let's not get eaten. And I think that makes it feel rather unimportant. I'm sorry that I sound like a bit of a grump. I wish Rebirth was better. I wanted my socks knocked off. If I had the same expectations today that I had in 1993, that I would just see some pretty cool dinosaurs, then I would right now feel very satisfied by Rebirth. But these folks have been making dinosaur movies for 30 years, and they should be pretty good at it by now. And so we should have gotten a better movie. Anyway, thank you for listening, and please like and subscribe.